Welcome to the Kevin Dunn Show, and we are so excited once again that you've taken the time out to join us. We're going to have a special show today. Maybe a little bit unorthodox, but have you ever went to a funeral before and after you left the funeral, you kind of wondered, what did the mortician do? What did the embalmer do? You probably had questions in your head, but you were afraid to ask. Today we have Jeff Higgins. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm great. Thank you.
And Jeff is a licensed embalmer and a mortician, funeral director from Higgins Funeral Home. When we come back from this commercial break, we're going to find out more what it's like to be a mortician and embalmer.
At Charter Bank, you get totally free checking with online statements. You betcha. Free mobile banking, free online banking, free online bill pay, free debit card, even a new account gift. Free. At Charter Bank, we're here to wow you. And totally free checking is just the beginning. Come see us or open online at charterbank.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Life in the country is a conscious choice. And with that choice comes hard work, attention to detail, and investing in the right tools to keep your home or farm at its best. So why choose anything but the very best zero turns on the market today? Exmark. Known for their durability, precision cut, and time-saving performance, Exmarks are the preferred brand of mowing equipment for the landscape professional and people like you who take pride in their lawn. For special pricing incentives, visit exmark.com or your local dealer.
Welcome back to the Kevin Dunn Show, and as I shared with you earlier, we have a licensed embalmer, mortician, funeral director here in our studios today. And I know a lot of you have had a lot of questions that you would like to ask, but you were afraid to. And death can be a kind of scary thing that people, don't like to talk about. But Jeff, how long have you been a mortician, embalmer?
Well, I actually grew up in the funeral home business. It was my father before me, then myself, and actually my boys are joining our business. I have a senior at Georgia Tech that has one semester left, and he'll begin his embalming school process that he'll need to go through, and then he'll be the first to join us as a third and fourth generation as we move on down the line into our family. But I've actually worked in the funeral business basically my entire life. I grew up in the funeral home. Our funeral home in Noonan, we actually lived upstairs in the funeral home when I was a small child. We lived there in the funeral home till I was 3. And we moved out of the funeral home at that time. But it's basically all I've ever done. It's all I've ever wanted to do. I look at it as not just a job, but a life calling. And I think that's really kind of what somebody that really does a good job in what we do, it kind of has to be that. There's really no in between. It's not just a job. It becomes really a part of your life. And to be honest, somewhat of a ministry, for your family when you're dealing with families at a very difficult time. And so I've actually done it about 25 years. 25 years. And all together, we've been in the funeral business over half a century. And so it's a long time, So it's I enjoy helping people. I enjoy it's so rewarding to be able to do things for folks that they can't do for themselves. Right, right. And that's a lot of what we do as a funeral home, as funeral directors do. Okay. Now, what's the difference between being a mortician and a embalmer? Well, in Georgia, it's very different than a lot of states. In Georgia, it is a dual license, and what that means is that in the state of Georgia, you cannot be a funeral director, just a funeral director, and you can't be just an embalmer. You have to be a funeral director with an embalmer's license. Okay, so the Georgia law requires that once you're graduate from an accredited embalming school, that you have a national board, just like a lot of industry folks have. We have a national board in the funeral service that has to be passed, and then there's also a Georgia state board that deals strictly with Georgia laws and that sort of thing, insurance laws, that sort of thing, that you also must pass. And then once all that done, there's an apprenticeship period. That it's an 18-month apprenticeship that can either be done before embalming school or after embalming school. That you serve an apprenticeship where your hours are recorded under a licensed funeral director. Right. And then once all that's done, you present yourself before the State Board of Funeral Service, and if everything is up to speed, then you are presented with a dual license, a funeral director license and an embalmer's license, which very much hand in hand, but they both serve their own purpose, for obvious reasons. Yeah.
So you touched on this briefly a few minutes ago. Can anyone go into this business? Well, what is your recommendation? And they don't have a special calling.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Here's my opinion, and we've all through the years had folks that have come to us that say, I feel like I want to be in the funeral business, or what does this entail? What do I need to do in order to be a funeral director? Well, it has always been my opinion that this is one of those occupations, or life calling, or whatever you want to call it, that you either can do or you can't. There's really not any in between. You've got to be able to, number one, you've got to have a heart of a servant, a service-oriented spirit about what you're going to do. The embalming side of it, a lot of people think that that's the most difficult part, and it is from the technical side. In other words, you've got to be, a trained embalmer to do things well.
Right.
But the side that folks have most problems with, and they get into the funeral business thinking they can do this, is the emotional side of it.
Okay.
In other words, dealing on a daily basis with death.
Hold on, Jay, just for a second. Let me take your mic, lose your mic just a little bit. I want definitely people to be able to hear what you're saying there. All right, now you can finish that thought. All right.
Yeah, that's fine. You either have the ability to deal with death on a daily basis, not just the death, but dealing with the folks that are affected by that death. Okay, and that's the part that a lot of people can't handle in the funeral business, because in our business, we don't just bury folks in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. You have to prepare mentally to bury children, to bury babies, to bury tragic deaths of young folks and old as well. But it runs a full gamut of the emotional side of it. Is what's so difficult for people to handle. The technical side, people think that's the most difficult. It's really not. It's really more of the dealing daily with the emotional situations that we have to deal with. That's the most difficult part. And I tell folks that if you think that you have a true calling into what is the funeral side, then get all the embalming part out of your mind and really look within yourself and see if this is something that you feel like you can deal with on a daily basis, and that you can offer something to families that they need. Now, whether that's just an ear to listen, give guidance to, give them direction. It's called funeral director for a reason, because you're actually directing them through this whole process. If you feel like that's the calling that you have in life, then we definitely encourage folks to do it. It's not an easy process. It's a longer process, because you have to have, you have to be a high school graduate or GED. And then from there, you've got an 18-month embalming college that you have to spend, and an 18-month apprenticeship. So it's not something you can just get in tomorrow, and expect to do it. So it's designed that way for a reason, because usually folks get in and they either know pretty quick if this is something they're going to be able to do or not. And we encourage folks that have a true life calling that it's rewarding. It's a lot of hours. This is not something that you show up 9 to 5 and work at. It's a lot of hours. It's a lot of in the middle of the night kind of situations. And but I wouldn't be doing anything else. I wouldn't have my children going into it if I didn't have the true feeling that you're doing something worthwhile.
It's interesting you mentioned about the emotional side, and here I am thinking about the technical. I mean, the physical, the touching, and what you see.
The case.
And I didn't think about it. You have to actually deal with the emotions daily. Well, anytime you're involved.
The embalming side of things, as far as the preparation of remains, that's taught. In other words, I can teach you how to embalm. You know, I can teach an apprentice. We have some real good apprentices under us right now. I can teach you how to embalm. I can teach you all the little ins and outs and the tricks and all the technical thing. I can teach anybody that, but I can't teach you how to deal with the emotional side. Okay, that's something that you have got to come to grips with yourself in order to deal with that. Okay, and that's the part, the untaught part is the difficult part.
It's the difficult part.
That's the difficult part. Yeah.
So how do you, personally, how do you view death?
You know, I look at death in a lot of different ways, and I've had, just like you have, like we all have, we've experienced death of grandparents or parents, spouses, God forbid children, you know, that kind of thing. I have never personally, both of my parents are still very active in the funeral business, so, but I've lost grandparents, and you know, everybody, every family looks at death very different. They approach it differently. Some folks that have lived a long life and are, maybe even had a long sickness or illness, sometimes death can be somewhat of a relief for the family. You know, if their life is right, and if they feel like they've accomplished anything in life that they feel like they should be. But at the same time, the question I always get, especially with children or tragic deaths and that sort of thing, is always the question, why?
Why?
You know, that is something I can't answer.
Right.
You know, I don't know that anybody, and if they tell you they can give you that answer, I think they're probably lying to you. We can't give the answer of why something happened. All we can do is help you get to that next step. Help you get to that next step of where you need to be in that grief process. And that really, ultimately, becomes our #1 goal.
Right.
Outside of the technical things, it's to get you to that next level of where you go on to whatever normalcy of life you think you can have at that point in time from death.
Okay, great. Okay, you receive a call. Someone needs you to come pick up a body.
Right.
What's the very first thing that takes place initially before the body actually comes to the funeral home?
What happens is now we have, which I'm a huge supporter of, and we have a great one, a lot of great companies, matter of fact, right here in LaGrange, of hospice.
Right.
That's only been within the last decade or so that has really become a more acceptable way of the end of life is through hospice.
Exactly. And
what hospice basically is without going into a lot of explanation, basically it gives you a way to die with dignity.
Right.
You know, gives you a lot of folks go home and they're cared for in hospice. We have a great hospice facility here at Hospice LaGrange that actually has an on-site facility where you can go. And so that's one of the first folks that that we can deal with when somebody dies. Hospice now through the state of Georgia has the ability to pronounce someone deceased. In other words, pronounce someone dead. So hospice or a hospice nurse simply makes the call to the funeral home of choice of the family, and then the family comes either to the home or to hospice and begins the process with the family. The second is they die in some type of institution, whether it's a nursing home, hospital, whatever the case is there. Very much the same process. The family, of course, is usually there, but if not, the family's contacted, they come to the hospital or whatever. Again, nurses and doctors release those remains to the funeral home. They call the funeral home of choice, and we respond.
Okay.
And the last is if they die, and someone dies that is not under the care of a doctor, okay, or some type of tragic circumstance. And in Troup County, we have a coroner system, which we have a very good coroner. Jeff Cook's a very good coroner. He's got some great deputies that work for him. But basically, when there's an unattended death, not under the care of the doctor, or a tragic death, whether it be a car wreck or whatever, the sheriff's deputy usually are the first to respond to that. And then if the death has occurred, they contact the coroner. The coroner comes to the scene and makes his investigations and what he needs to do from that point, and then same process. He contacts the family to find out funeral home of choice, and then the coroner actually calls the funeral home and gives us instructions on what needs to happen from that point on. So those are the three major things that we deal with, and then from there, funeral homes respond, whether it's daytime, night, doesn't matter when it is. We respond to the house or hospital, nursing home, whatever the case is, and make an initial contact with the family, find out sort of their preliminary plans, and make an appointment with them to come and start all their plans with the funeral.
So you pretty much on call 24 hours a day?
We are. Not me personally all the time, but our business has grown so much all through the years that we have a shift that is on during the day, and then we have a nighttime shift. I still do a lot of it myself at night. I rotate myself on that. I don't think I don't ask my employees to do anything I wouldn't do, but we have different folks that are on shift call at night, and licensed embalmers that take care of things, funeral help that goes to houses or hospitals and make removal, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right, Jeff, some valuable information. We're going to have to pause and take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're actually going to find out what Jeff actually does during the embalming process and how the body is actually prepared.
Trailers, Jewelry and Pawn, 504 Greenville Street, serving LaGrange for 42 years.
Pop's Party Place in LaGrange, with more than just inflatables on our soft floors, has the largest party space in the region. Of course, Pop's specialty is our giant party playroom, especially equipped for you and your child to make great birthday memories. School classes and teams celebrate with us too. Does your group need to raise money? Call about our Spirit Days. Now open weekdays for discounted parties and open play. The star in your family has a place at Pop's. Check out the new club room for teens and adults. Perfect for the Sweet 16, turning 13, and the Big 4-0. Call for a tour today and find us on Facebook, Pop's Party Place, where kids can be kids.
Maximum Tax Professionals in West Point has an expert staff that will meet all your tax preparation needs. Maximum Tax Professionals would love to prepare your taxes. Their ultimate goal is to maximize your return with you receiving your refund usually within 7 days. They offer free estimates, W-2 Express, notary services, and all military, self-employed, and walk-ins are welcome. You can even earn cash on referrals. And don't forget to ask them about Audit Plus Protection. If you would like your return maximized, visit Maximum Tax Professionals in West Point. Welcome back to the Kevin Dunn Show, where we are talking with Jeff Higgins from Higgins Funeral Home here in LaGrange. And now here comes the question that a lot of people want to know, even though we had some insight on the emotional side. Okay, a body enters the funeral home.
Right.
You pick the body up.
Right.
What's the process?
Well, the process first is in talking to the family. The state of Georgia requires permission for embalming. In other words, it is not a state law that you are embalmed, number one. Okay, it is a family choice. Now, funeral homes can have their own rules and regulations as far as visitation, open casket, that sort of thing, as far as embalming, but it is not a state law that you are embalmed. Okay, it is a choice that the family makes. Once that permission is reached with the family, that is their plans, then the state has a very, very rigorous mandate of what embalming rooms have to be in the state of Georgia. There's lots of requirements, ventilation, OSHA requirements that is very strenuous.
OSHA's in the funeral home too, huh?
My goodness, in a big way, which is fine. You know, OSHA's fine because they, especially in the funeral business, they serve a very, very good purpose because it's welfare for licensed embalmers.
Right.
That workforce safety. Outside of that, there's a lot of chemicals, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit in a minute, but there's a lot of ventilation that has to be present, and so once the body is brought back to the funeral home and that process begins, embalming is a very difficult process, but yet it's simple in its school of thought, okay? Because basically in embalming, what you're doing, embalming was first designed Civil War era in order to preserve the body. That was disinfect and preserve the body was the original intent of embalming, so that if some soldier died either north or south, that length of time to get them back home, there had to be some kind of a process.
Right.
And so embalming was invented. And basically what original embalming, and it still very much is this, is formaldehyde. That is a gas that is placed into a liquid form. Okay, and what formaldehyde does, it does those two things, and what it was designed to do, it disinfects. In other words, it kills disease. It kills especially after a period of time, infectious disease, especially nowadays, if we have to look. And it also has preservation to the body, which allows you to have visitation 2 or 3 days later, or if you've got folks out of town, even lengthier than that. It preserves the body. And now embalming chemicals also have a huge impact on appearance, because now embalming chemicals are not just for preservation and disinfection, they're for cosmetic reasons also.
Oh, okay.
So the cosmetics are different dyes and different things are placed now in embalming. So it actually goes a whole nother level that it hasn't done, you know, in past decades. So once the body is brought back to the funeral home, that whole process begins. And basically what you're doing in embalming, and it's such a simple thought, is that you are replacing bodily fluids, blood, that sort of thing, with embalming fluid. Okay, and basically the way that is done is a licensed embalmer finds in different areas of your body your main arteries and your veins. Okay, and into that artery, embalming fluid is injected from an embalming machine, which is a pressurized machine, that as you place that embalming fluid all throughout the body, drainage of those bodily fluids come out the vein. So as you inject into an artery, just like in your blood flow, the return comes out of your vein and is replaced with embalming fluid. And what then the embalming fluid does is once it goes all over the body through the arterial system, it escapes the arterial system into the capillaries of the skin. Okay, so once it is reached all the different extremities, that embalming fluid then escapes through diffusion into the capillaries and actually does embalming of the capillaries as well. So it's not just your internal organs that are embalmed, your actual extremities, all your skin basically underneath can change color and be brought back to its original when you're in life color. Fingernails and extremities, ears, all that sort of thing. And all that's accomplished by really advanced chemicals now that does that. That once it goes into the arterial system, escapes and gives a lifelike appearance and disinfects and preserves, which are the three things that you really want to be concerned with in embalming. Once all of that is done, the embalmer prepares the body for visitation, if that be the case. Embalmers are part of the course that you have to take is in cosmetics, believe it or not. Men, women alike, so we all get the same training. Cosmetics are applied, hopefully not a lot. You know, it should, because now embalming chemicals are so advanced that a lot of the cosmetic is already done with the fluid if it's done properly. Okay?
Done properly.
And there are good embalmers and bad embalmers. So some of it's not done properly. But done properly and done conscientiously, very little makeup should have to be used, but there are some that has to be used. Okay, and then the cosmetics are done. Incisions that you would have had to make in order to accomplish embalming, all those are sewed up, and the body is prepared on behalf of the family for a memory picture that becomes a memory picture for that family. And so consequently, all that needs to be done right, because if that's wrong, if the body is not embalmed properly and has a good appearance, you automatically start off on the wrong foot with the family. You know, because that's the first step after they've seen the person when they passed away. The next time they see them usually is in a casket. And so that needs to be right. And and it should be done right, and it should be done by folks that have a real insight and a real, quite honestly, the right training and talent in order to make it a memory picture that allows that, like we talked about earlier, allows that grieving process to begin. It really begins right there. That's the first step. That's the first step. That's right. Yep.
Now, how long does that embalming process normally takes?
A couple hours.
Couple hours.
Couple hours in just the initial things, you know, and then the cosmetizing and dressing and all that is you know, another process. Not a lengthy process, but embalming is usually accomplished in the normal case. You know, in a couple of hours' time. Of course, all bodies are not the normal case.
Exactly, and that was going to lead to my next question.
That's a very good, good point, because like we talked about earlier in the coroner system, if there's a tragic death or a murder or a car wreck, any of those kind of things, an investigation is done. And that investigation usually entails some type of autopsy, a post-mortem examination, which is done by licensed pathologists, doctors that do an autopsy on the remains that determine what the true cause of death is.
Right, right.
And that autopsy body is then the same way returned to the funeral home, and the funeral director then has a whole nother gamut of things that you have to deal with.
Wow.
But it's not the normal case then. You know, it's an autopsy body, and special training and teaching goes in order to how to handle the autopsied remains, and you end up with the same result.
Same result.
But it's done a lot more lengthy and a lot more detailed process than just the normal embalming.
Now, are different chemicals used on Caucasian people or African American people?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, there are. There are certain specific embalming fluids that are designed for all races, to be honest with you. Not just black or white. Because in a Caucasian embalming fluid, you're going to have more dyes because the more fair the skin, a lot of times the more help you have to get from some of the cosmetic dyes. In African American and black, there are not that many dyes that are present because you're not trying to change the color of skin back to what it is, because that's just not necessary. Now you're still wanting to accomplish the same things, okay? But as far as cosmetically, that's not a huge of a problem.
Right.
But now with, like, for instance, Asian, Indian, that sort of thing, there are certain chemicals that are designed for that skin tone, okay, that don't have a reaction to change. For instance, if you had an Asian, let's just say, and you embalmed them with fluid that was designed for Caucasian, that Asian skin color is going to be lightened, for instance, okay, and you don't want that. They want you want your actual skin color. So the embalmer should know what is should be used in whatever the race that basically you're embalming. And I've embalmed every race that I can think of all through the years. And again, you're wanting to reach the same goal.
Right, right.
But at the same time, you need to be very conscientious of appearance. And that's what you deal with more when you're dealing with a race.
Okay. And why is the reason, and I think this probably it's going to have to be the last question. Time goes by so fast.
That's good.
Why is the reason that Caucasian people can't stay out as long as, and like you said, it might be with different races, but that's a lot of times,
you know, a lot of that is folklore. A lot of that is really not true.
Okay.
If someone is properly embalmed through a trained embalmer, the normal window of someone being their appearance being fine for visitation to be shown is really the same between black and white. Okay. What happens? The difference of that is that when a body begins to decompose or is not embalmed properly, on a white individual, you begin to see skin discoloration. That's one of the first signs of that. And what that is basically is like extremities is where you see it first. Ears, fingernails, that sort of thing. And they begin to turn black color.
Right.
Okay. So where this whole school of thought is going, obviously, is when that begins to happen on a black person, you don't notice it as much because it's already that way. Okay. But that is really not the case. The same thing is happening. Okay. And properly embalmed body, whether it be black, white, Indian, Asian, island, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
If it's done correctly, you've reached the same process and you've reached the same goal. You just have to be a little more cognizant the lighter the skin gets to make sure that it's embalmed properly, and the preservation aspects of it are the same.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm sure you've enlightened our viewers and our listeners. Very interesting information. Once again, if there's a topic that you would like to see discussed here on The Kevin Dunn Show, please email us at thekevindunshow@wjcntv.com. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.